figures don't lie.
Yeah.
And 76% of suicide rate in the UK is men.
I'm not surprised.
And between the ages of 40,
Yeah.
45, I think. To 60. Hello and welcome. My name is Desiree Shaw. I'm a psychotherapist. I practice at the Priory, and I'm on a mission to make therapy accessible and change the world one thought at a time. I'm here with Martin Thomas, and in a movement for Men's Mental Health Month, which is November, which is the 2nd of November today, the beginning of Men's Mental Health, I'm here to discuss how men are affected by things like anxiety, depression, and issues to do with life, basically. So I'm here with Martin. Hello, Martin.
Hi, Desiree.
How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well.
Excellent.
So Martin, I recently saw on your blog page, Adapted. And what I've brought you here for today is to just tell us a bit more about Adapted. What is Adapted? What is it about? I do love the name. First of all, let me just say that I do love the name Adapted. I think it says so much about what I can expect, because I know it's got to do with mental health and I have read it, so I do know what it's about. But could you explain it to us?
Yeah, sure. So the idea of Adapted came about from my own personal experience of anxiety back end of last year and early this year, and how I've kind of learned through sort of counselling and also just kind of working through my own kind of personal challenges that kind of led to all that. That actually, out of the back of all these kind of experiences that we have, you can kind of learn to adapt your life and to kind of be sort of more comfortable in your own skin and be sort of more aware of actually your own personal circumstances. So the name Adapted for me kind of came about from sort of really just kind of using that as I've adapted and so can you.
I like the way you've used the word adapted, because it does say so much about everyday life that there's so much we have to adapt to. Because when I was growing up, it wasn't like this. And so much has changed. I mean, I remember there were only 4 channels. I remember when Channel 5 was launched. I remember when life was not as busy, even though it was busy.
Yeah.
And then we've got all of this technology come into play. I remember the first mobile phone, the massive brick, the Motorola. Do you remember that?
Gordon Gecko phone.
Do you remember those phones? And now life has taken on this completely different swing where we're kind of plugged in and we've been forced to adapt, almost against our will. So it's quite interesting where you've written a whole blog about anxiety and having to adapt. Could you tell us about your anxiety journey?
Yeah, sure. So I think, this isn't something that just kind of happened overnight. I think it's like many things, you kind of get a straw that breaks the camel's back. I think for many years I've kind of suffered with it kind of under the radar. And I'm one of these kind of people that kind of puts a lot of pressure on myself quite often. And reputation kind of goes along with that. And I think for me, when something kind of happened at the back end of last year that potentially, in my own personal opinion, would have an impact on my reputation, it kind of really kind of triggered all that kind of anxiety stuff up to the surface. They've been bubbling away and cooking away for a while. So, I think that plus a few other little bits and bobs that are going on in my personal life as well, just kind of culminated in what ultimately became a sort of like a panic attack.
What was that like, having the panic? One of the things I wanted to ask you as well, I mean, because it's Men's Mental Health Month, and I've got a keen interest in men's mental health, because I do believe that it's not something spoken about. It's something which we have kind of, due to stigma, due to the way men are taught to express their emotions, due to the way that emotions almost, it's like you had man and woman and emotions went whereas that's not true. We're all human. We all feel, we are all emotional, whether we like it or not. We're emotional creatures. That is just how we are formed. And I think it's quite interesting, men's mental health. Now we're looking at it, because figures don't lie.
Yeah.
And 76% of suicide rate in the UK is men.
I'm not surprised.
And between the ages of 40, 45, I think, to 55.
Yeah.
And that's quite big.
Yeah, it's a generational thing though, isn't it? 'Cause I think there's a thing that when my age, I'm sort of 48, just turned 48, and I think there's a sort of generational aspect of you always kind of learn from the environment you've been brought up in, and it's not a negative on your parents, it's not a negative on your grandparents, but I think it's one of those things that men didn't necessarily talk about their feelings and stuff. So you kind of learn by observation and behaviours kind of actually how you should be as a man growing up, and those kind of things you kind of have to sort of think about. So from that perspective, I think, it's really important to kind of try and break down that kind of stigma, I think, and that's what I'm sort of trying to do with Adapted as well, is kind of sort of say, look, I'm going to be really open about what I went through, and I want it to be an opportunity for at least one other person to kind of be able to talk about their stuff, and it helps people. And I think it's really about talking, and it's not about kind of trying to bottle things up and say, oh, I can deal with it, I'm a man, I should be able to kind of handle all this stuff. That's crap. It should be about actually, anybody should talk. Talking is medicine, and it's kind of like,
I like
really,
that.
there you go. And it is. It's just been talking about stuff. It doesn't matter if you're male. It doesn't matter if you're female. It should just be about actually anybody should talk, and talking just takes the pressure out of it.
I agree, and I love that analogy. Talking is medicine. As a talking therapist, I completely agree with you. But it is, and I think the stigma that men face with talking about their feelings, I remember growing up, and there's one saying which always makes me giggle, but they would say to the boys at school, don't be a big girl's blouse. And I used to think, what's a big girl's blouse? And then somebody explained to me, it's like the flouncy, don't be so flouncy. So, and I'm thinking, wow, I mean, these are the little nitbits that we're giving boys as they're growing up to adapt and take into their lives and adapt to that. Yeah. And actually,
it's an overly masculine approach to things. It's kind of like, actually, you should conform to a certain masculine stereotype, which is, I don't know, playing rugby and kind of like being able to take bruises and knocks and whatever else, and fine, get on, but. Yeah.
What happens to?
It's not. It's not. We're all sentient beings. We all kind of have emotions, whether you kind of outwardly show it or not. And at the end of the day, is these things are just there and they make up who you are. And it doesn't matter if you're male or female. I just still think it's really important that you just kind of are open about things and talk about stuff, because it takes that kind of weight off your shoulders, and it allows you to have a kind of clear thought about what you need to do.
I agree, and I think as what happens, the stigma of mental health, and I think when people hear mental health, and this is one of the things I find really, really quite concerning. I said to my mum the other day, "How's your mental health?" And she said, "I don't have mental health." I was like, "Yes, you do." She said, "No, I don't." So we all have mental health. It's whether our mental health is healthy or not healthy. Yeah. It's how are you approaching your mental health? And what I'm pushing forward is mental wealth, which is a way of being actively aware of your mental well-being, so that you can manage yourself through all situations. Doesn't mean you're never going to feel sad, you're never going to be angry, but you can just recognize when you're having that moment for yourself. And I think with the stigma of mental health, the whole toxic masculinity, where men feel that I've got to be the alpha male, I must be this strong character, so any weakness,
it's too much pressure on yourself.
That's too much.
And I think, and I think there is. You kind of, you go through circumstances in your life and you think, oh, I should be able to kind of handle this. I should be strong enough to handle this. Yeah, actually, ultimately, you can be, but it doesn't mean to say you kind of put your mental health in the back corner to kind of worry about at a later point. It's all part of the same thing. It's all part of your cognitive thinking about stuff. And I think you're right. You talk about, how's your mental health? If you ask someone, how are you doing today? Hope you're well. The hope you're well kind of question shouldn't just be considered as being, hope you haven't got a broken bone today. It should be about actually, how are you feeling? Are you feeling stressed about stuff, or are you kind of happy and
we find that
stuff? So it's a real kind of mixed bag of kind of, there's so much stuff kind of sitting inside there.
There's so much, because we don't even say, I mean, some people say to you, how are you? Go, I'm fine.
Oh, too easy to say.
I'm fine. Yeah. I'm fine. I don't want to cause a problem. I don't want to cause a fuss. Yeah. I'm fine. Everything's all right. Yeah, I'm fine. When you're not fine.
Oh, it's easy. It's an automatic response. It's like, you're not going to. I'd be very surprised if someone sort of said, actually I'm feeling like rubbish, and I've had a rough day and whatever, I think people's first response was going to be I'm fine. I think the interesting thing is, and I'm sure I saw someone talking about this, was ask again, because actually the first answer is never going to be the truth.
That's a good point.
It's going to be a bit kind of like hidden by something else. It's going to be an automatic response. The second time you ask is when you're likely to get someone to actually say something to you.
To be real.
Just be real. Yeah, exactly. Just be authentic
To
about
be
stuff.
yeah. And that's another thing, I think, living in this world that we have at the moment, there's so much about where we don't have to be real. So we've got social media, we can fake the way we look, we can fake the way we sound. There's so much pretense in so much that we're doing that we can just pretend how we're feeling. You know, you got your status, how am I feeling? And people start talking about how great and wonderful they are and living this lifestyle.
It's creating a false persona. It's not who you are.
It's what we aspire to be these things, don't we? And why? Is this it's all status?
It's all status. It's about status and kind of perception and reputation and all this kind of stuff is all kind of mixed in there about kind of all these kind of different aspects of someone's who they are. And I just kind of think, you know, you just need to be who you are. Don't try and be something you're not. Don't try. You know, you can have great. You can be aspirational. You can want to be kind of like, you know, a version of yourself that is still you. But it's this stuff about kind of trying to create a false image doesn't sit well.
And this,
but we're, you know, I'll be honest, I've been guilty of it in the past. But you kind of then step back and you kind of go, well, actually, what's that really achieving? It's not achieving anything.
Is that more so the status-driven thoughts and behaviours? Do you think that happens more with men than it does with women?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. It's probably slightly different. I you know. Yeah, you kind of read stories about sort of paying sort of people to kind of manipulate images of themselves before they put on the social media. Okay, great, I'd love to do that, but I'm not really going to do it. But I think, you know, I think for men there's something about some other kind of level of status in terms of, is it sort of based on achievement in work or is it achievement in some other kind of context? And I think, is it real? What have you actually done to achieve that, or is this just kind of like a 5-minute fake window of opportunity you've kind of seized to make yourself look better about something rather than something which is real?
Well, this is it. I mean, and I think when we're status driven, because you'll get a promotion one day and you might not get it the next day. And when your self-esteem is attributed to you getting that promotion at one stage or another, your self-esteem is doomed.
Yeah.
And I think, from my experience, men going into their mid-40s to mid-50s have to deal with the difficulties of being in the workplace, having to deal with the pressure of work, and possibly not achieving the way that they think that they should.
Yeah, and I think we also kind of put a lot of pressure on ourselves to kind of mash up some sort of stereotype of work. You know, in the modern workplace, it's about performance-related pay. It's about your kind of how you're kind of positioned against your peers, and you know, that kind of perception side of things. And I think what's really important is kind of actually don't kind of feel be the best version of yourself. Yeah? Don't. I think there's something slightly kind of when you feel that you kind of create a personality to kind of be a competitor to your peers. It's not necessarily the sort of best output of yourself, and I'm not entirely convinced it's always the best output for the organisation that's looking to kind of get that.
Do you think that wreaks havoc on the mental health?
Oh, it puts a lot of pressure on you. I think in the sort of modern workplace, you kind of got that performance-related pay. You're kind of competing against your peers. You're trying to sort of achieve a certain stereotype, which is the sort of, I don't know.
It's the competition as well.
It is. You're competing, and I think it does. It just puts an extra level of pressure on yourself. You know, I think at the end of the day, we can all achieve what we want to achieve, and be the best at what we can do, without necessarily putting those additional pressures on yourself sometimes. Personal opinion. But I think, you know, it is there. It is the sort of thing that brings up a certain level of anxiety, especially when you're on performance-related pay, and you know, you kind of think, well, where am I against everybody else? We all talk about league tables. Where am I on the league table? So you do.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Because when you start measuring yourself against how much you get paid against another person, and then it's like, my house is bigger than your house. My car's bigger than your car.
My bonus check is bigger than your bonus check.
Yeah, and that all plays a massive part in the whole, I'm where I'm supposed to be. Because being, and I do think it is slightly different for women, because women do have their own, we have our own competition and our own status driven and that all stuff, all of that happening for us. Whereas with men being the breadwinners in the family, or supposed to be the breadwinners in the family. So that means the pressure of going to work and achieving. And when do you stop achieving? And is it just that you're the breadwinner? How does that work when you actually go home and you're a dad? When does the pressure stop? Are you still, does it ever stop?
I don't think it ever stops. I think it's underlying. I think it's, it's quite easy to fall into that trap of kind of, the job is not 9 to 5 anymore. It's like it's 7 days a week, and you're kind of always connected, and there's always something going on, or you're always kind of thinking about the thing that's going on next week, or the thing I should have done today, or whatever. So you don't necessarily get a chance to kind of disassociate yourself from that kind of side of thinking and that kind of mental processes going on, that actually in the back of your mind you're thinking about work stuff, because I need to do this, because if I don't do this then someone else is going to be doing it better, or whatever. I don't know, all that kind of stuff is going on. I think it's kind of really important that actually you kind of start to bring, it's a bit of a cliche, but you kind of talk about the work-life balance, but there is a kind of case of actually, if you're sitting in the car or you're sitting on a tube or whatever, that's the moment to switch it off. Because actually at the end of the day, does the world stop if you don't handle that email, like when it comes through?
It's the mobile phones.
Can it wait until the next day? It's the mobile phones, and I think I've been guilty in the past of just being kind of glued to your phone or glued to your iPad or your laptop or whatever else. And I think it's kind of really important to kind of reduce that anxiety by responding to the beep on your phone. Do you need to answer it right away? You're kind of putting a lot of pressure on yourself to kind of be constantly on top of that sort of side of things, that fear of missing out on an important email that's come through. Email's probably one of the worst things that's ever been invented, because you kind of...
Do you think emails or texts?
Equally as bad. But I think, I remember when I started working, and it was like, email was like a pretty rarity. And we used to sort of type out memos and send it to someone. That's a memo, it's written, someone's got to receive it and read it. And email now, it's like it's there, it's instantaneous, and I think we're sort of somehow creating additional level of pressure on ourselves to respond to an email that comes through when it comes through.
And it's also, there's an expectation, and there's different levels of that pressure. And I think, because when you receive an email, it's how was the email sent? What tone was it written in? And does that denounce you in some way, and how the person's speaking to you? And how does that affect your status? And how does the way that you respond to the email affect? And then you've got texts, what tone was this set in? And there's a load of stuff going on.
But it could be really easy to misconstrue the tone in which it was sent. I'm sure we've all read emails and thought, well, someone's really kind of laying it on thick. But actually it's just the nature of what they wrote, but you can kind of misinterpret it, and I think you can kind of get anxious about the fact that someone has sent you an email and you thought, uh-oh, what's gone wrong here, when actually it wasn't sent in that context at all. So there's something kind of about the sort of going back a little bit, and I think trying to sort of dial down the dependence on emails and messaging and actually having a conversation.
So I wanted to get a better understanding of Adapted, because when I read Adapted, what I understood was, from my point of view, it's written by a man, of course, who was breaking down this stigma of mental health and opening up and saying to the world, this is me, this happened, and it's another side, and here I am, and I've got involved. And that's what I understood from it, which I thought was very inspiring, from the point of view that we understand men don't talk. And because of that, the work I do, working with men to actually open up and speak about how they are feeling. I'm finding anxiety is a massive issue. Depression is a massive issue. These are the things which are normally bottling up things like shame and guilt and all of the rest of the unhealthy negative emotions. So could you tell us, where is Adapted going?
Good question. Adapted kind of came out of an idea I had. So a few months ago there was a sort of mental health awareness week, and I went to sort of like some things at work, and there were sort of various talks, and having been off for a couple of months work with anxiety and the sort of impact of that, I was very aware of the fact that some people knew about it, some people didn't. I felt comfortable talking to some people about it and others not so much. But I went to this session and there were sort of various speakers, and some people just being really open about their own personal challenges or anxiety. And I just kind of thought, I'm at that kind of place in my life where I've learned a lot and I've just gone through this, and actually I felt that it was the right time for me to talk a bit more openly about these sort of things. So the first thing I did was I kind of actually wrote a post on LinkedIn, which was actually really quite scary, because when you're kind of connected to like, a professional network is a very different thing to some of the sort of social networks. And I wrote a post there and I got so much positive kind of feedback from what I wrote. And I thought, actually there's something here. Let's kind of explore that idea a bit more. And it took a while. I kind of, you have everything else going on in your life, and you kind of want to sort of try and get a balance. But what I was doing was, in between I was writing, and I wanted to write down my personal experience with life, what I've been through. And from that I then decided, actually let's kind of break this kind of story that I just kind of written just to kind of just get it out of my system and just kind of talk about it, and to kind of break it into sort of like what will ultimately become a series of blog posts. But my intention with Adapted is really I'll get my story out there. I'm happy to talk to anybody about it and what I went through, but I just want it to be a catalyst that actually allows other people to potentially sort of feel that they can kind of open up themselves when they may not have felt they could do. So if as a sort of late 40s guy kind of just talking about my experience helps someone else, then that's a win. It's worth the time I put into it. But I think longer term, what I want to sort of try and make it become is something where actually it becomes a bit like this. It's kind of like an opportunity to have conversations. Whether it's kind of through this sort of like the pages I'm kind of creating, the site I'm creating. An idea I've got is around a podcast where we kind of have guests talking about it. Through to just being a sort of channel. It allows people to kind of feel in a safe space they can kind of talk about things. It doesn't matter if you're a man, it doesn't matter if you're a woman. I don't care who you are. I think it's an opportunity to just
opening it up, yeah.
And I think that's the real kind of key thing. And I think if I can make it accessible to others and make it feel like they feel comfortable and safe in that environment to have that kind of conversation, then it's kind of like that sort of mental health first aid kind of stuff.
I like mental health first aid. I think as well, being in the professional world, having dealt with anxiety or any form of mental health, recognizing that it comes with its own stigma. And I think most people are worried about saying to their boss, I'm stressed out, I need some time off, because of the stigma that gets attached. Oh, well, you can't handle things, you're not going to be able to do this, and actually you're human. You're going to have a point where you need to sit down, you need to rest.
It's prevalent. Everybody has got something, triggers and whatever else, and how it kind of manifests itself. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's I think it kind of comes down to, we're all going to have a day when we feel a bit kind of not fantastic about stuff, and that's okay. It happens. It's just talking about it, and I think less, as you sort of say, is driving down that stigma, being less worried about having that conversation. I think that's the key thing. Is don't feel that you can't.
Yes.
Because I think people would rather you did.
Yeah.
I think if I had someone who came to me and sort of said, I'm having a bit of a rough day, I'm not feeling too great about things, whatever, I'd kind of want to have a conversation with them and sort of say, look, you want to go and have a coffee and have a chat.
Because you could actually deal with the problem before it happens, couldn't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, head it off at the pass.
Yeah,
real kind of
could actually
burden.
deal with it before it happens.
Yeah.
And I think that's all where we have to deal with things like, particularly with men, the toxic masculinity, having to actually say, I'm just not feeling good. I think I need to just, I might need to take a moment or two.
Yeah.
And
I kind of came up with this idea, and I don't always live up to it, but I kind of had this thing about 10 at 10. And it was kind of an opportunity to kind of just take 10 minutes at 10 o'clock on the days you can kind of afford to do it, to kind of either go out and go and get a cup of tea and while you're on your way there, is kind of disconnect from things, leave your phone at your desk or leave your phone somewhere else and go and make yourself a cup of tea or go and get something. But it's just a 10-minute break to just kind of be a little bit kind of more present. Mindful.
Yeah.
I think it's that kind of opportunity to kind of step away from things for a few minutes. I think those little breaks can just kind of help to kind of dial down any kind of pressure you may be feeling under. And, you know, you never know, it can create a kind of corridor conversation where you just kind of bump into someone and say,
oh my gosh, I'm seeing these little tidbits, the corridor conversation. Talking medicine.
Yeah, talking is medicine.
Talking is medicine. I love it. But the corridor conversation, because you could just bump into somebody and just have a chat.
Yeah.
Like away from whatever the stress of the project was or whatever was going on in the office.
And I found kind of when I just did my initial LinkedIn post, is I had some people kind of I know at work kind of reach out. And you know, you just have that corridor conversation about stuff.
I like the corridor conversation.
Yeah, and it can just help.
Yeah.
Even if it's like a couple of minutes. It's just like, okay, it's just a thing shared. It's just
I like that. Well, thank you so much, Martin, for coming down. It's been lovely having you.
Cool.
And you know, and I'm going to put the link of Adapted in the description box,
cool.
So people can have a look at what was going on and what we've been talking about.
And feedback on it. This is like a new idea, and it's like, you know, it's never going to be perfect straight away, and I kind of want it to be a place where people can feedback on ideas.
Perfection.
That was my thing. But I think, you know, I think it's just an opportunity to kind of get feedback and what works for people, and we can adapt it to be the right thing for other people as well.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Tortured Superhero series. It's been lovely having you down.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for watching, and if this is your first time watching this segment, be sure to watch the previous segments on the Tortured Superhero, Spider-Man Under Stress, and Spider-Man Synopses. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe to this channel.